And I thought, I'm 21, who cares? I'm doing this. So I dropped out of school and focused my time at the restaurant. In my mind, you have to put other people before you. If you do that with a loving heart, like that is going to transcend any sort of system or procedure that you could have because they appreciate it.
You're listening to the NEI Pioneer Podcast, where we showcase and share authentic stories of Northeast Indiana. In this episode of the podcast, we have a guest host, Mark, who will be joining us as a partner from Barrett McNagny, and we're going to be interviewing one of their legal clients and a Fort Wayne business owner, James Kahn. If you live in Northeast Indiana and the name James Kahn isn't familiar to you, I'm sure one of his many popular restaurants will be Hoppy Gnome, Proximo, and BakerStreet. This is a great conversation where James shares his story of growing up in a low-income family to dropping out of college to then becoming a successful business owner of multiple restaurants in a region that he grew up in. His passion for the people in the community that he serves, as well as his family, is evident in the stories that he shares of overcoming challenges along the way. You really won't want to miss this conversation, and I won't stand in your way any longer. So let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to our premiere episode of the NEI Pioneer Podcast. I'm Jonathan Sackett.
I'm Ryan Twiss.
And we've got some great guests today. I am so excited for this show, and not just because today's special guest brought beer. And I'm not kidding, they're on the table. So today we've got James Kahn, who's here from ObiCai Restaurant. And I also wanted to point out, and we're going to start with Mark Bains.
Oh, boy.
Mark, first of all, Mark is here, is an attorney from Barrett McNagny, and we have them to thank for this show, along with Sweetwater.
Mark is a partner with Barrett McNagny.
Hey,
Very
he's
big
kind
time,
of a
very
big
big
deal.
time, yeah.
Like, I don't know. I need you to come correctly when you're introducing my friend here.
Yeah, happy to support it. The space looks great, and the couches are comfy, and we have drinks.
And we have drinks. Well, the thing, Mark, if it's okay with you, I know you're kind of a guest host with us today, but I got to tell you, the team was printed out your bio for me, and there's a couple of things that are standing out here.
Wow, I wasn't sure there was anything that would stand out on my bio.
Cum laude, Wabash College.
That is accurate. It is actually very much in Latin. The entire diploma from Wabash is in Latin on sheepskin. Very old school.
Wow.
Is that true?
With the translation on the back of it. I could walk you over to my office after this and show you.
Let's kill the show. We're going. So there's that member of the Wabash College football team.
Yes, I was, yeah.
What position?
Some pounds ago, I played quarterback and actually even played a little wide receiver.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're just full of surprises. And J.D. cum laude, right? Indiana University, Moyer School of Law, Bloomington.
All of that is accurate, yes.
And you and Ryan went to school together.
We did, yes.
Did you guys know each other before law school?
No.
Oh.
No, we met down there.
Yeah.
I would usually see Ryan if we were out having fun somewhere.
Well, I mean, and it's funny
Never in the
because
So we
library.
saw each other a lot.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because that's how I know you is through him.
It's through fun.
He's also the glue that binds. So Mark's going to join us as one of the hosts of the show today, and again, Barrett McNagny, great partnership. Can't thank you enough for everything.
Our pleasure.
So okay, let's get into it with James Kahn.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I have a ton of questions for you about. So how many restaurants does ObiCai own?
We own 3 restaurants. Yeah, and 3 restaurants and a brewery. Own and manage them ourselves, yeah.
Okay. And how did you get into this? Because you're from Fort Wayne, right?
Born and raised here, kind of grew up poor and I lived on the southeast side of town as that was, in the 80s and 90s. And so went to Harding High School and didn't do a lot
Hawks.
of... What's that?
Hawks.
Yeah, Harding Hawks.
Go
that's
Hawks.
Right. That's right. You'll find out soon, but Mark and I both combined to get 1 bachelor's degree and 1 law degree. So,
Hey, so can I add my resume to his?
Yeah, but we're all thrown in together.
That's how that works. Okay.
So I was actually a really great student in high school, and I didn't want to leave my mom. I didn't want to move very far. I didn't want to grow up. I didn't want to live in a trailer court. So my college prep was asking my guidance counselor, like, hey, where could I go? My physics teacher, actually. Where could I go and get a job using physics? And he was like, yeah, engineers. And I thought, like, a train driver? Like, why would they? It's on a track. And he was like, no, they design things.
Here, have this straped hat. It'll look
Yeah,
good
right,
on you.
yeah.
Right.
So, so the next question was, okay, well, is there an engineering school that is close to Fort Wayne? And he's like, yeah, Purdue. I'm like, great. So applied, 15 minutes or however long it takes to apply, got accepted, didn't do any other college prep, and then went to Purdue. And
What, you had a propensity for mathematics or something?
I still do. I'm a huge nerd. I love math.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
But what I found out later in life, what I really love is problem solving. And like physics especially was really fun in high school to me. Like, again, proving the fact that I'm a nerd. Like, you used to get these problems like a backpack fell from a plane and, you know, it's windy and there's a thunderstorm and you have to find like the trajectory that somebody else has to dive to get it. And so it's like 5-6 pages of work and then you get, I don't know, super nerdy.
Okay.
Let's just suffice to say, I'm a huge nerd.
You had me at nerd.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
So just because you're an expressive guy and you're kind of talk with your hands, I can't help but notice there's an injury.
Yeah.
I told you we're going to ask some questions.
Long story short, I sat on my finger, and I'm.
Well,
maybe we should make it a medium story because that sounds pretty bad too. So
How about long story medium?
yeah, let's
that's
go
good.
long story medium on that, can we?
And by the way,
Yeah.
that's when the show really took a dump.
Yeah,
All
right.
So I want to hear the medium. story.
So I've also I wrestled at 112 pounds my senior year of high
Oh
school.
my goodness! Wow.
112.
Speaking of pounds ago,
Yeah, well, right.
walking around school and the wrestling coach is like, "Hey, you go here?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "How much do you weigh?"
I need a really light kid.
I need a tiny
Do you weigh about
human.
112 pounds?
Yeah. So
He's measuring them up.
I'm 4'11" and 90 pounds, and I got the first one to get my varsity letter in my class because there wasn't another human in the school that was that small. So yeah, anyways.
Did you wrestle uncontested?
Oh yeah, there was no one to. No,
Nice.
I had never wrestled before. I went 0-16 and 1-16. I beat one kid. I got pinned twice by I think his name was Keon Brooks. He was a senior at Northside, and he was state runner-up as a junior, and he was a senior my freshman year. And my whole team is like making fun of me. This is really pertinent to Northeast Indiana, but
No, that's okay.
yeah, so my whole team's like, "Hey, this guy's gonna kill you." Like, there's no support. I was so nervous the first time I wrestled. He pinned me in 9 seconds. That's really hard to do.
That's how long it takes
Right,
to
well,
walk out to the
well,
mat.
it
I
It,
mean,
it takes
uh,
3 to
it
pin.
takes three
Yeah, it
with
takes
your
3 to
shoulders on the
pin.
ground.
Like, right? So somebody's got to do something. He must have saw me
Did you just
pee in
run
my
out
pit.
there and fall on your back? Is that
For sure. And then I remember the second time we wrestled Northside, like,
He toyed with you for 6 seconds.
right, yeah.
And then he got bored.
The second time we wrestled Northside, he pinned me in 33 seconds.
Oh.
And he picked me up and slapped me on the butt. He's like, "Hey, man, good job." I'm like, thanks for that. So yeah, anyways, so to my finger, I've gained a couple of the pounds, as you might say,
Okay.
over the years, and
And you were checking.
what's no. I've been working out. I've been going to this gym, and it's like a group gym, True Fit Sport and Fitness. They're phenomenal. I'm doing this leg lift thing on my back, and then my pants are like sliding up. I've got like a plumber's thing happening here in the middle of the gym, and so as my legs are in the air and I'm doing this leg lift thing, I try to reach up and grab my pants and pull them and cover, my butt, and I wasn't strong enough to do that, like without coming. So the gravity and my fat legs came flying down on my finger and busted my bone in half.
We should have stuck with long story
Yeah, I
short.
was
Yeah, I tried to tell you I
You know,
sat on it. Like,
just
Yeah.
so that we're all on the same page. You remember in the pre-show when we were talking about you not having a filter?
Yeah,
Well, you just proved it.
I
Thank
told you, yeah.
Thank you.
there's really not much.
This should make for a good interview.
There's no secret. You expected to learn something about business.
First of all, how did you go from not doing the best at college to becoming this entrepreneur who owns a couple of categories of restaurants?
Man, a thousand things, I guess. So I had
And engineering on top of it.
I had an engineering internship in after my junior year in New Haven,
Okay.
and worked there that summer. And they offered to hire me in after I graduated if I would transfer back to IPFW. It was IPFW at the time, and finish my degree there. And I thought, I was I was happy to just be getting by at college. I was having a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Turns out I was researching how to make good beer.
Yeah,
right.
And
Market
So-
research.
and how to
Right.
maintain it.
Yeah, just the dividends on that were about 20 years late. But so I thought, man, it's time to grow up. I need to take advantage of this, get a job. And so I transferred back to IPFW. And this is the kind of decisions that I made as a young adult. I didn't have enough money to have car insurance. So I was saving money for.
Apparently, my Geico commercials weren't.
Yeah,
kicking in
they
on
weren't effective in 1999 or whenever that was, 2000 maybe. So I got in a car accident my first week of classes, and it was a no-fault accident. And it was on campus, so there was no actual police report. And it was, hey, you pay for your car, you pay for your car. Well, this guy had a Jeep Wrangler and T-boned me, and I had like a little Eagle Talon, so my axle
Oh
was
my
broke.
God.
My car was destroyed. His car had like a paint chip on it. So I had to get a second job and work to pay this car off. And there's no Uber. This was 2000, I think. 2000. And I could basically get a ride one time a day. So I chose to get a ride to work and work all day to save money. And again, not making great decisions.
Where were you working?
I was working at Allmet in New Haven.
Okay.
They fabricate steel, and they have an engineering component that does electrical schematics for these asphalt control plants. So working there, chose to work to get money to pay for things. Didn't bother to pick up the phone and call IPFW and say, hey, I'm gonna drop these classes while I work. I just didn't, and chose to instead to get straight Fs. So Purdue is a pretty decent engineering school, and they don't like it when seniors get Fs. So their choice is to kick somebody out. So I got kicked out for my second semester, and kept working. Didn't really bother me too much. Then I would guess I was embarrassed to be kicked out of school. By the summer, I had reapplied to get back in, and it was this huge process. I got accepted. I had fixed my car in the meantime, but now my student loans were due because I'd been out of school for 6 months.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, I need to get a second job. So I got a job at Biaggi's. They were opening in Fort Wayne. And you mentioned off camera that you got demoted in your first professional job. I got hired as a server at Biaggi's, and showed up first day and
Busboy.
Exactly.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Like
no, you're not.
He
You're not
said
gonna make
from
it.
busboy to business pioneer.
Yeah, it's a true story. So it didn't really bother me. I just needed cash. But what I found, I did one more semester of college that fall, and was working at Biaggi's. I got promoted to food runner and server and bartender, and I would be at my engineering job thinking of different ways to sell stuffed mushrooms when I would go that night to serve. And I realized I really loved, like, in engineering, at that job and at my level. So surely there's smarter people that were more dedicated to the craft that got to do more challenging things, but I didn't. Like, it was like, okay, here's this basic work, you do this. At Biaggi's, it was a challenge every night. Different people, different circumstances, different mess ups and different problems to solve every single day. And I loved it. And by the end of that semester, so I had worked 2 jobs and did one my senior year, first semester. And I thought, why am I going to school? I love doing this restaurant thing. And they were asking me to jump into their management program. And I thought, I'm 21. Who cares? I'm doing this. So I dropped out of school and focused my time at the restaurant.
Did you call them?
I
this
did
time?
call them this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I let them know, like, hey, thanks for everything. I'm done. They were like, great, good choice. Yeah,
You were that crappy wrestler kid, right? That was you? Okay.
Yeah, you got pinned in 9 seconds, dude. What are you doing here?
So do you think that was a catalyst to explore your own creativity and you didn't have that outlet before, or?
Honestly, I think that growing in the 80s and 90s, like, every conversation for me, anyways, in school was, you have to go to college. You have to go to college. You have to go to college.
Oh yeah.
I think it's great that we're not necessarily pitching the same thing. I think there's a lot of trades that are good, but I graduated high school at 17, and I mean, for most of from 8 years old to 17, I mean, by 9, 10 years old, I was paying bills I wasn't paying a mortgage, but I was helping my mom with groceries or helping my mom with electric bill, or if I made some money, it was hers, and she obviously didn't take that all the time, but it was there for her.
Sure.
So I was a pretty responsible, driven kid, and then you put me into a college dorm where somebody else is like, there's no bills for food, there's no bills for drinks. Like, you have
Somehow
a place
there's
to
always
stay.
beer in the small fridge, though, right?
Yeah, then you could spend your time hustling to find a way to find some alcohol. So the freedom that was allotted to me in college was something I wasn't prepared for. So,
well, and the other thing that came up in the pre-show, you and I were talking about, you and I have a lot of synergy with both Milwaukee and Chicago.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this while you were talking, like, what made you stay here to do it? Like, why the Fort Wayne area?
100% my mom.
Really?
Yeah, I would never.
Did you ever consider expanding to Chicago, Milwaukee?
Not. We've been asked several times.
Yeah.
And I have my family there that say all the time, just come up here. But I would never, ever, still today, leave my mom. I got married when I was 26, and my wife was raised in Germany.
Oh, where in Germany?
Stuttgart.
Oh, yeah.
So she was raised in Stuttgart in Norway. One of the conversations we had was like, well, we could live here. We could live here. I was like, we can live in Fort Wayne. Like, and I made $30,000 a year as a restaurant manager at Biaggi's. It's not like I was like, some sort of, hey, I've made it here, and
You're a
we're
player
planting a
now.
flag. And I was like, we are not leaving my mom. And and I think said at some point, like, hey, we should really talk about this, because I'm really not going to leave my mom. But fortunately, she grew up similarly, single parent household. Her mom raised her, and she has the same affinity for her mom, who also lives in Fort Wayne. So, neither one of us would ever. I made my mom move across town just to be closer to where we lived, and then I moved across town, and now I'm making her do it again. Like, and she works for me. I see her most every day.
So, okay, it was interesting to me too. And again, when I was going through your bio, one of the things that I was thinking about as I was reading it was, okay, so some people would say you failed along your path to success,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes we fall forward while you're trying to struggle to make this, right? You got a $30,000 a year job, which at the time probably wasn't too bad, and especially at your age, right?
No, yeah, I was happy with it, for sure. Yeah.
So, okay, what lit a fire under you, or did somebody light a fire under you that said, okay, this is my path now. I'm going to start to capitalize on this?
Actually, so one of my the manager that hired me at Biaggi's, his name is Sherman Bell. So one of my best friends, Mark, knows him pretty well.
He's still around?
Yeah.
still
So
here?
this is an interesting story, a full circle type story. So he hired me at Biaggi's. I was 21. He was like 27 or 28. We hit it off. Same background. Grew up single moms and became really close friends. He mentored me a lot in the restaurant, but left the industry after about 3 years of working there. Sherman would be his story is not mine to share, but absolutely amazing story of an American making it. And as difficult as my youth circumstances were, I was like silver spoon compared to Sherman. When I'm at the point that I met him, I was, pretty down on myself. I graduated 8th in my class in high school, and then I dropped out of college. And, even loving the restaurant industry, there was a few years of just self-loathing and what did I do? I was just kind of hating myself. And then when I met Sherman, the more I got to know him, the more I thought, man, I have no excuse.
This guy's way worse than me.
Well, not way worse, but he's overcome so much more than what I've ever had to deal with. And so I thought, I've got no excuses. So the more we became friends, we started talking. We started a real estate thing together. We bought duplexes, and he ended up leaving the industry, and I almost followed him. But I got a great mentor that they hired at Biaggi's to be my general manager, and fell in love with what I was learning there. Fell in love with what I was doing again. but it was definitely Sherman that kind of lit that underneath me. And as I went on one trajectory through Biaggi's and then eventually BakerStreet, hopping on Proximo, I was able to circle back 5-6 years ago and help Sherman buy and own a restaurant. So he now owns a restaurant in Fort Wayne. Yeah. But that was something that I was able to kind of like help him get through it, which I did so happily because I know what he helped me through. I mean, at the time I met him, I was, again, 21, just in a really difficult time of my life. And he was that catalyst to light a fire. So
That's awesome.
Hi, everyone. We want to take a quick moment to shout out our podcast sponsors. Now, first, you might be wondering who I am, so let me introduce myself. I am Hannah Hannigan, and normally I'm behind the camera as the videographer, but today I wanted to be in front of the camera to shout out the people who made this podcast possible. Barrett McNagny and Sweetwater Sound are the two sponsors of our podcast, and they're both located in Northeast Indiana. If you don't already know who they are, let me introduce them to you. We're going to start with Barrett McNagny. As Fort Wayne has grown, the Barrett Law Firm has grown with it. Founded in 1876, Barrett McNagny is one of the oldest law partnerships in Indiana, and it's among one of the largest just in Northeast Indiana. They have the breadth of experience across a wide range of practice areas to provide you trusted legal counsel where and when you need it. And Sweetwater is actually the one we were able to purchase most of our audio and video gear from to make this podcast. So if you like how this podcast sounds or how it looks, be sure to check them out. Sweetwater, the nation's largest, and I would also add friendliest destination for music gear, is also your one-stop shop for all things podcasting. From audio interfaces, recording software, mixers, microphones, cameras, and lighting, Sweetwater has everything to get your podcast up and running. Enjoy personalized gear advice from their dedicated team of sales engineers, as well as free technical support to get your podcast connected and up and running. Really, what's not to love about that? So whether you already have a following or you're still chasing the next big thing, Sweetwater is going to be the ones to help you create a podcast that everyone will be talking about. So if you're interested in either of these companies, be sure to check out the links in our description. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
I've owned restaurants before myself. So,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I got to tell you, the business, for me, I'm more of a creative type, if you can't tell. Can we tell? Yeah. But I think, to me, I found it stagnating in some cases, because if you don't have the right people doing the operational efficiencies and the ordering and the predictive modeling, really, that's where we had a heck of a time, because in New York in particular, you're dealing with that lunch crowd, and that's it. You can't get the dinner crowd.
Really?
You can't,
okay.
No. And it was partially a victim of circumstance of where the restaurants are located. But what happens is you're depending upon that foot traffic, you're depending upon the catering, and it's hard to get those people to gravitate towards a dinner menu. So that was probably outside of establishing the brand, that was my only creative outlet. So, as you were doing all this stuff, like, what stood in your way? Was it, and the reason why I bring that up, and it's a little bit of a trick question, but the reason why I bring that up is, do you think it was self-imposed? Do you think there were specific people that were standing in your way?
I hate to say it this way, but nothing stood in my way. It was, even growing up as in a single parent household for the most part, God always had somebody. Like, I had a male mentor at every stage, and sometimes that was my uncle, sometimes it was a teacher, sometimes it was even my dad, but and then at some point it was Sherman and Ken Davenport, my GM at Biaggi's. I had encouragement, people always pulling me back to what I should be doing the whole way, even when as I was fighting that current. And then even at the point when I got BakerStreet, it was a couple in Fort Wayne, Doug and Patty Wood, that these two fools, who I love
dearly. The Wood
dearly.
Foundation?
That's his father.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep.
But they bought BakerStreet in 2009 because it was going to close. And not because they wanted to own a restaurant. They didn't want to see people in 2009 lose their job. So they, over the course of like an hour conversation, they write this check for more money than I could imagine in my lifetime. And the owners of BakerStreet were going to close it down, and they basically said, "Hey, here you go, in an hour, and we'll take care. We'll take all your debt. We'll take everything. We'll take our chances." And
Sorry, where are you at this point? Are you managing the restaurant at this point?
I'm at Biaggi's.
You're still at Biaggi's
So
at this point. Sorry.
so I'll backtrack. In 2005, I got married. 2006, we had our daughter, and I'm working 90 hours a week in the restaurant. People say it all the time, but I really was. There was 2 managers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm working open to close 6 days a week. And my wife and I are just, things aren't going well at all. And I'm in a Bible study with John Bars, who's a partner at Barrett McNagny. And he's telling me, "Hey man, you gotta get out of the restaurant. You gotta do something else." But I didn't graduate college. I don't have any other work experience, and I'm thinking,
This is your path.
yeah, I don't have another way to go.
Right.
I can't. Now I'm making $35,000. I can't go to $7 an hour, which was the wage at that point, and start over.
Mm-hmm.
And so John sent me to 3 different companies in Fort Wayne, one of which was 80/20, who Doug Wood was an owner of. And now fast forward a few months, and I'm walking into 80/20 with this super hyped up resume of, my high school GPA, basically, with some college classes.
In the-
There was
and
nothing else on the page.
also attended college so I tell him, like, look, I'm just trying to, long story short, I'm trying to start over in an industry where I can pay for bills and keep my family fed, but have a chance at keeping my marriage. That was April of 2008. From April of 2008 to October of 2008, I interviewed at 80/20. I made 19 trips to Columbia City, which is where 80/20 is. 19. That's a mixture of interviews, aptitude exams, personality exams, shadowing. I used every vacation I had to spend time to try to get this job. There probably wasn't a person I didn't know at 80/20. And
Here's the guy cutting in the grass. Meet him too.
yeah, and I was like anything. My last interview in September, October was with Doug's dad, Don, and talked to him for a couple hours. And, he's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Don, anything. Like, just if I can make at least $35,000 a year so I can pay the bills, I will be your hardest worker. I promise." He's like, "Yeah, you could do anything here." It's like, great. I'm thinking, like, we got it. We're going to be there. And he's like, "Yeah, Julie will give you a call," the HR manager. And so I go home. A couple days go by. Week goes by. So after 2 weeks, I finally I break down. I call him, like, "Hey, I'm just checking." And she's like, "James, we just laid off our whole 3rd shift. I've been dreading. We can't hire you because we've got to find positions for them." I'm like, "For sure, I get it." Fast forward 1 year, and it's 2009, again in August. And this conversation with Doug and his wife, Patty, happened with these first financiers of BakerStreet. And Doug had written a check, and Doug calls me on a Sunday afternoon at Biaggi's. And he's like, "Hey, do you remember me, Doug Wood?" I'm like, "Yeah, I remember you. What's going on?" And I had literally just worked open to close Friday, Saturday, and I was opening on Sunday. I hadn't been home but for like 5 hours. I was so excited to hear his voice. And he's like, "I'd like to talk to you." I was like, "Great. I get off at 5, maybe 6 o'clock. And he's like, "Okay, well, let's meet at Starbucks." But then he showed up to BakerStreet or to Biaggi's to have lunch, and with his wife, 2 of his daughters, and his son. And I'm like, thinking, like, what is happening? This is going to be great. And he's like, "We want to talk to you. We bought a restaurant." And this is probably a public podcast, but the words that were in my head were like, you can't even say out loud. Like,
He wants you to double down in the industry.
I said, I just stood there dumbfounded. I was like, "What were you thinking? Like, why would you do that?" And I was like, if there was if you could see the balloon deflating,
I was going to say
deflation.
deflation.
I was like, "This is stupid." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, I'm trying to play it off, and I was like, "Well, I got to work right now," and I said, I'll just meet you at Starbucks." And so I went over there, and there I was like, "Doug, that's the stupidest thing a smart man has ever done. Why did you buy a restaurant?" And he said, "Look, the restaurant was going out of business, and that one of the partners had a husband who had just passed. And he said, the Bible says take care of widows and orphans. We had the money in the bank. Like, it would have been a huge sin just to say we're not going to try to help people at the expense just so we could save money. So we had to do it." And I was like, wow. I mean, I'll admit, like growing up really poor, I had this disdain for people that weren't poor. Like if you had money, in my mind, you were just evil. And it shattered every stereotype that I ever had of somebody. And still to this day, 15 years later, they continue to shatter stereotypes for me. But I don't really have them anymore. But anyway, I told him, like, hey, I don't want to go there. I'll totally go work for you at 80/20, but I will also, every night off, every morning off, I'll help you over there. I'll do consulting. I'll tell you everything I know about the restaurant industry. You don't have to pay me. I just want to help you help them. So 2 or 3 months go by of me doing that, and Doug is always dropping hints of, hey, why don't you come over to
It'd be
Baker?
great to have
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Why don't you just do this? And
Sure.
I'm like, there's no chance. I love Biaggi's. I love my boss. If I wanted to work in a restaurant, it's here.
Right.
And
I already have a job I don't want.
yeah, exactly. Like I have
You
a
mean I
job.
can get a second job and not get paid for it?
Yeah, I have a job that's ruining my marriage. Like why do I take a second one? So finally, he push comes to shove, and he's like, listen, what is your deal? Like, why are you not quitting? And I'm like, Doug, I can't do this. This would require even more work from me. I have a child. I have a wife. I have bills to pay. I can't take this kind of a risk. And I said, I've got $30,000 of debt. Like, I can't just, it doesn't matter what you pay me. I'm not in a position to do this. And, well, actually, that was the second. First, I said, like, I don't want to come work for this guy that was the GM there. Like, that's just, I have a great GM here. And I said, no disrespect. I don't want to come work for you in a restaurant.
Well, even sometimes you choose the devil you do know, right?
Right, yeah. So he's like, you're misunderstanding. You're not going to work for me. You won't even work for this general manager. He can work for you if you want. You go there, you run it. It's your thing. And, pay me back what I put into it, and then you can have it.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, that's an amazing offer. And then that's why I said, I can't take that risk. I've got all this debt. I've got a child to feed. And so he writes me a check for the amount of the debt that I told him. And he says, here. And I'm like, Doug, I can't pay back Chase. How am I going to pay you back? Like, that's not how this works. He's like, it's a signing bonus. Like, what? You don't have to pay me back. Like, do this. Take a chance.
Cool.
It's amazing. And I still told him I didn't know if I could do it. I said, I have to talk to my wife. So I went home, and my wife and I talked. We prayed about it. John Bars, like, this whole time was integral in my, like, counseling. And ultimately, we decided it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. And so I literally tearfully put in my notice at Biaggi's and started at BakerStreet. I worked a shift Saturday morning at Biaggi's, and I was at BakerStreet that night.
Wow.
Which you would have been anyways.
Which
but
I would
for
have been
free.
anyway. Yeah.
But
Just
this time you're getting money for it.
Different table, yeah.
And
So-
and the wife was pleased with the move?
Well, I think the opportunity to be out of debt and yeah, have a chance. So I asked Doug this, like, what if I fail? What am I going to do? He's like, your debt compared to what we've put into this restaurant is really negligible. So if you fail, at least you gave it a shot and gave me some peace of mind.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it. Just like if you fail, you start fresh. You walk away.
I'm sorry. Did you want to say?
Yeah, what were your reservations? I know you were, connected to the people at Biaggi's, whatever, trying to maybe get out of the restaurant industry. I mean, once he makes the offer of the, clearing your debt, it seems like, where do I sign would be the answer.
Yeah.
Was there any part of that was just your self-doubt of whether
Fear?
you could pull it off?
There were, man, humbly, I would love to say yes. I felt like I could do it.
Yeah.
I had opportunities at Biaggi's to step up. I wasn't even a general manager there, but I was acting GM in Fort Wayne for a few years, and I had chances to go to Missouri or Chicago or even Rochester to be a GM, and I just didn't want to leave my mom. So I felt capable. My biggest fear was, I guess, not being able to turn around fast enough and pay Doug back, or I'm not like a half effort person. So I felt like if I go here, I'm going to be there. And I was. The first year or 2 years, I was there open to close every day. We weren't open on Sundays. So I worked open to close Monday through Saturday. and we took Sundays. I took half of Sunday off, and then I would go in Sunday night and work on stuff. So my biggest fear was probably, like, I wanted to get out of the industry for my marriage, and so I was really scared that it would cost me my marriage. So
Leaning into more responsibility even than...
yeah, and just I remember on Christmas that first year, like, I had a stack of invoices, and I'm going through, like, there weren't systems or procedures like that a corporation would have, and so I'm like working on this project to code out our inventory, and on Christmas Day, and like my mom jumped in and helped, and my wife was helping, and I just remember thinking, like, thank God that they're supporting this, because one, it needs to be done. I don't have any other time to do it, and I'm stealing from them to do this. So yeah, that my biggest fear was growing up the way I grew up. Like, I have a good relationship with my father today. I did not for most of my childhood, and so all I ever wanted to be was a husband and a father. And so, like, the thought of maybe losing that that is, and it still is, the scariest thing in my life.
So James, you accept this gig in 2009. So I mean, 2008, 2009, we're coming out of a recession. So you start your kind of ownership journey at one of the worst times. Yeah. And we're kind of coming out of one of the second, maybe first worst time in your ownership journey, which is COVID, kind of the global pandemic. How did what did you do to survive that second kind of stint? And did you learn anything from that first real challenge that helped you kind of weather that storm?
Well, I think, like, so one, just so you know the story of how I got into this in the first place, right? So that's like you couldn't even draft that in Hollywood, to be real. Like, for somebody to be like, I'll give it to you, just pay me back. So, so my faith in God has just always grown, and going through 2009 and him making that successful. When COVID happened, honestly, my first thought when COVID happened was like, okay, this is it. This is how, because I'm not a quitter. It's really difficult for me to quit things. So my first thought was like, well, this is God's way of letting me out of this without having to quit. And not that I wasn't at that stage seeking to be out of restaurants, but I thought maybe there's something else for me. But I'm not a quitter. So we laid off every March 16th, I think the governor's order came out, and March 17th we laid off our whole staff. And there was it took 10 days or so before the government announced any sort of help. The first thing that was announced was the EIDL loan, Economic Injury Disaster Loans. And then at the end of March, they announced the PPP, or somewhere towards the end of March. So in those 10 days, I probably slept maybe 15 to 20 hours total. I mean, I spent all day trying to get our staff hired somewhere else, and there's nowhere for them to go. Everything's closed down.
Right.
So we're working on that. We're trying to get unemployment. Unemployment office was just a hot mess. And I spent all night trying to, like, research. There was, like, everybody was shut down, and so there's all kinds of articles being written about what could be done. Is there going to be a bailout? Is there going to be this? And so I'm reading, like, daily briefs on what is Congress doing, what's the president talking about. And when the EIDL stuff came out, that night, the day that I found out about that, I stayed up all night reading about it, and I applied for all of our businesses the next morning. When the PPP stuff came out, I read that the entire law. Like, I mean, I don't know if lawyers read the entire. You probably should, but
Mark doesn't. But most of them.
Right, the good ones do.
Yeah, but
Mark pays people to read for him.
I bet John.
Very powerful guy.
John Bars definitely
John Bars,
would.
right.
Yeah, he's a stand-up type guy.
He got in there. He got in there.
But I felt like it was all up to me, and I mean, as knowing that God was there to help me. But I felt like, okay, God has given me this drive. We had 300 employees at that time, and in my mind, I had failed all of them. I mean, there were people that have never done anything else in their life but restaurants that trusted us for their employer that didn't have jobs. And so I was like, I can't let these people down. So I became, an expert in that. We were the first ones to apply for PPP loans at our bank anyways. We got all of our money like that first week. And if you remember that first round of PPP, nobody got money.
No.
Like it was gone in 12 days.
Yep.
And when that happened, then, they're working on PPP round 2, but I spent the next month just trying to help everybody I knew. Like a lot of people that were with big banks were like kind of brushed aside for big companies. And so I was bringing a lot of those people into Bippis State Bank where I bank at, and just trying to pull everyone in to get them lined up to get the second round right away. And I felt like 2020 was a marathon sprint of like, what do we have to change? How quickly do we have to change it? We've got to adapt here. And from like getting a chance to open in May, but under extreme restrictions, I think we opened May 12th, maybe. The first day we were open at BakerStreet, somebody called the governor of Indiana, and he called the Fort Wayne Fire Marshal, and they came to inspect us. And because most people took half their tables out of their restaurant to get to 50% capacity, and I used geometry to measure 6 feet of space in between every seat and sat people at specific places without losing very many tables to try to, because you've got
Your engineering background. Came
no
to
doubt,
fruition,
yeah,
man.
there it was.
That's awesome.
There's $50,000 at Purdue, well spent.
How do I use physics?
Yeah,
You know,
how do I use physics
what?
to keep a
Yeah.
restaurant open?
How do I use physics to make sure my wife doesn't kill me?
Yeah.
I heard your name, not just because I associate it with the actor, but I heard your name a lot when I was coming here to join NEI. And I got to tell you, meeting you today, what a great guy. I think, just your attitude, you have an aura around you, and it's not just because of our backlighting. But I think
or the beers he brought.
or the beers
Yeah.
he brought, which thank you for that again.
Yeah.
James, can you
Yeah, have another one.
I think the one thing that I think our listeners and viewers would really like to hear from you is any philosophical things that you have, because it sounds to me like you just have this, I always say passion, perseverance, those are the things that are going to make you. And
Yeah.
if you've got purpose in your life, and there's struggling kids out there coming out of college that can't find jobs, people are down on their luck. It's a hard economy right now.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's up and coming that you've made it through, and you've really made it through? I mean, I got to tell you, first of all, I love your restaurants, and I wouldn't just say
Thank
that
you.
either.
I
do.
appreciate it.
And we all do, but you're kind of legendary around here. So these up and coming kids, what would you want to tell somebody who's behind you in the path of life?
Perseverance is crucial. You can't just give up. Like if something's hard, it just means you have to work harder. And I kind of look at it like a battle. The hardest thing for me today is that people think nice things about me, and I don't want to say I liked it better, but I think I liked it better when everyone doubted me. Like
You like to be the underdog?
I
punch
love
up?
being told I can't do something, and then I'm like, I'm about to show you I can do that.
I bet you can't treat us to dinner. I bet you can't.
Yeah,
do that.
for sure. Yeah, that's easy, man. That's not even a challenge.
It's not even a challenge. I'm the owner.
He's not gonna bother with that one.
But I think that, like, one, don't give up, and two, the world isn't against you.
Even when you feel like it.
Even
is.
when you feel like it is, there's so many people that want to help you. I am a culmination of 1,000 people that have helped me get to this place. I've had so much help to get here. Like it would have never happened without a village. So I would say you have to persevere, be willing to trust, and in my mind, you have to put other people before you. So for sure, like I'm trying to do things to help my daughters and my wife, like my daughters in particular, not have the life I had growing up. Our philosophy is to do that by helping other people first. So in hospitality, like the whole industry is bent on taking care of somebody else. Yeah. Right? We work on Christmas Eve, on New Year's Eve, on Valentine's Day so you can go out with your family on Christmas Eve, on New Year's Eve, on Valentine's Day. So there's some sacrifice that comes with that. If you do that with a loving heart, with a desire for your guests to have an experience, like that is going to transcend any sort of system or procedure that you could have, because you're putting somebody else first, and people realize when they're put in front of you, like, and they appreciate it, right? So it only drives more loyalty, but for the right reason. Like, people will come to the restaurants prayerfully because we want to say yes. Like, whatever your question is, like, will I make you a beef Wellington at Baker Street? Yeah, I will. If it's Saturday at 7:30 and you want it at 7:31, like, I can't do it now, but make a reservation and let me know 2 days in advance, and we'll prep it, because we've got chefs and cooks that like to do that stuff. So we want to say yes.
You know what? I have a philosophy that I think people put out what comes back to them. I really think they do. And I think that you probably invited a lot of that stuff, and you're very modest that you don't give yourself the credit for that.
Well, genuinely, I don't think I deserve it. Like, I mean,
see, I think I deserve it a lot. And I'm not getting it.
I mentioned Doug and Patty. There's John Nichols and Tim Ash. I've been given so much, like, by other people.
Something you said earlier made me think about your the real estate development you have going on right now. Is, you kind of liked better when you were the underdog. I guess,
right.
When you shift out of the restaurant world, your comfort zone there, and shift into something as dramatic as a residential real estate development, or I guess with a mixed use component as well. As I understand
mixed use.
Leave it to the real estate attorney.
I got to get into real estate.
He's got the experience.
So, tell me about that process, and how'd you get to this point? And I was actually driving around 469 just today and see that you got roads in, and kind of a boulevard look, and it's looking great. So
thank you. Yeah, we wanted to build a pool at our house at way southwest, and I didn't want to invest money into a pool if we ended up moving northeast to go get closer to Blackhawk Christian, where our kids go to school. So then we couldn't find a house northeast that we wanted to buy. Then we couldn't find a lot to build a house northeast that we wanted to build on. So a couple friends and I found this 9-acre parcel. We thought, well, we'll all build a house, and then we'll split this up, and we can afford it that way. We started down that path. Took about 6 months. Didn't get anywhere. Then we found a 20-acre and thought, well, this isn't that much bigger. And then that didn't work. We found a 50-acre. It's like, well, that's not that much bigger than a 20. And then that didn't work. We found a 75. And then a great friend of mine, John Nichols, is a professional real estate developer. Sure. And he was who I was bouncing ideas off of. And so I sent him this 50-acre parcel. And he's like, he shows me this 200-acre parcel that is not even listed.
That's a lot bigger than 50.
It's a lot bigger, but
I thought you were a math guy.
I know. I just kept thinking, because I was studying this whole time on how to do it, right? So I'm learning without doing. I didn't intend to do it myself. I thought, well, let's see if I can buy this, and then by this time I'm on the Regional Development Authority board, and I'm getting involved in economic type things and development, and I toured Carmel, and I saw their mixed-use development. I thought, man, we need to do this in Fort Wayne. So this is all happening at the time that I'm negotiating to buy this land. And I start kind of casting this vision, and Ron Dick at Design Collaborative was really helpful in helping me with that. And we close on the land, and so I start trying to sell the vision to professional developers. And they're good at what they do, and there isn't a reason for them to do anything different, because they're good. They're making money. They've got things going, and so I thought, well, if you won't do it, then I will. And I enlisted a lot of different people. I have 14 different investors in that thing, and so we wanted to build a neighborhood in Fort Wayne that's more akin to Forest Park and Arlington Park, and neighborhoods that are investing into public, like end user infrastructure. So There's 3 different parks on site. There's trails through the woods. There's cart paths between ponds, and like you said, boulevards with trees that are already lining them, because we want the end user to develop a community. And if you think about great neighborhoods in Fort Wayne, those houses get listed and sell right away. And more often than not, hey, Mark, I'm selling my house. Well, hold on, wait. Mm-hmm. My friend has been trying to get in here, right? And they never even get listed.
Sure.
So that was the idea behind it. I think having the mixed use, like the commercial residential mix. So we have restaurants maybe lined up to go in there.
Where would you find such a place?
I know where could you? I don't know. So
some fool that would open a restaurant. I don't know.
For sure, he is a fool. And we've got some activity driven things, like maybe like a pickleball type thing. I know that Ace Pickleball just came to town, but this would be more of a quaint, smaller thing for. I mean, the commercial area is 300 or 240,000 square feet, so it'd be like kind of a town square with high-end apartments and condos, and then you have this retail on the first floor with some medical, coffee shops, restaurants, and just activities to do. And I think that is, if I could put my finger on something that's helped downtown development, it's people want to be downtown because there's stuff to do downtown. Sure. Right? So I think eventually the next stage of evolution for Fort Wayne is going to be mixed-use developments that are further away from town. And if you look at Indianapolis or Chicago, you have those areas that people go to.
Oh yeah,
that are not necessarily downtown.
No,
you don't
New
go downtown
City
every
was
time.
the latest one, just outside of it.
Well,
So-
you can see that even in Fort Wayne as the corridor communities, Wells Street and some of those really
Oh,
build
yeah.
up. And that's
East
how
State
it used to
Village.
be now. But
Yep.
now you're looking at with different economic centers like the Regional Medical Center and different
Yeah.
in different parts of the community. It makes sense to build that out. It's really smart.
Yeah, and I think especially like if you're building a house right now, I think, I don't know how, don't quote me on this part, but when we were filing for our permits to build a residential neighborhood inside city limits, I remember people in the planning department like, nobody has built a neighborhood in city limits in I don't know. I don't know how many times I had to go look something up.
Sure.
Because residential developments in the Fort Wayne area are happening in the county.
Right.
So it's just been a long time, but I love being in the city and having proximity to things, and I just don't think I'm alone in it. So I'm betting that it's I'm not alone, and that people are going to want to do it.
I like it. The Eagle Talon accident leads you to owning multiple restaurants.
Yes.
The need for the pool. Now you have a couple 100-acre
subdivision.
mixed-use development here.
Yeah.
It starts off small, but it gets it grows exponentially in a hurry with you, James.
Imagine the economic activity we'd have in America if they hadn't discontinued the Eagle Talon.
Oh my God! You have no clue.
I didn't want to admit this, but that was my winter car.
Oh, nice.
Was it your winter car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Eagle Talon.
I looked one up the other day just for nostalgia. Like they're $18,000-$20,000.
Oh wow!
I bought mine for like $2,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like because Fast and the Furious, I think, like made
There
it.
you go. Probably.
Yeah.
What, and the name of the development? I don't think you said
The
it.
Villages of Arneo.
Okay.
When is that launching?
There are 3 houses under construction right now.
Wow.
So the residential side is done. We would have, if it wasn't for the wet weather, we would already have the trees in, the cart paths in, the trails are already through there's 32 acres of woods with trails in them already.
Get out of here.
And apartments are going to start being built this fall in September. We've got some, maybe it's either going to be duplexes or it's going to be villas we're in negotiations with a couple different contractors on that to do that piece. And we're actually already starting to try to line up meetings with commercial developers to partner on the commercial side.
Good for you, man.
Yeah,
Really?
we've been really, God has been unfathomably good.
Wow.
So,
Okay, now this is the wrap up. So typically what we do is we have rapid fire questions. And Mark is going to be asking you those, I believe, this time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these are just quick either ors, and it kind of helps us promote the region. All right, let's hit you with the rapid fire.
Rapid fire. All right. Comets or tin caps?
tin caps.
DeBrand chocolate or Coney Island hot dogs?
Coney Island.
Okay.
That was a tough one.
That's tough.
Three
He's
Rivers
getting a phone call.
Festival.
Yeah, he's getting 2 phone
Oh,
calls.
sorry, Kathy.
Three Rivers Festival or Johnny Appleseed Festival?
Johnny Appleseed.
Okay. Well, this is an easy one for you. If someone's visiting or new to your county, where you take them to eat?
You know, actually, I would say Hideout, Junk Ditch, Taj Mahal, maybe Copper Spoon, Catablu, Mercado, Talone. And Asakusa.
Short list there. A long trip.
Yeah.
A long trip.
Hey, come hungry.
What a humble
if you're
guy.
coming, come hungry.
If you had to make a Northeast Indiana essentials list or bucket list of best experiences in the region, you just gave us a bunch of restaurants to go to. What's maybe the best experience in the region you think you can go engage in?
Man, I'm such a lame person.
Well, it sounds like they could just go up to your new development and hang out there and
For sure.
and enjoy all the activities. So.
Number one activity would
Newman.
be purchasing a new residence at Villages of Arnett.
Building a new
lots
house.
available.
So,
Let's get pictures of it.
I would say if there's a new experience, is experience the people that are here.
Yeah.
Like this is if you're coming from outside of this area, and maybe Jonathan, you can speak to this, but it's in my mind the best town in America. It's definitely it captures a little bit of things to do, and it captures a whole lot of like people that care. Yeah. So I really love being here.
Wow, couldn't have said it better.
But he'll try right now.
But I'll try right now I'll try to sum all this up with Eagle Talon. The last thing that I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk on real quick, because we got to wrap this up, is there anything you want to say to that kid that pinned you in 9 seconds?
Hey man, thanks a lot. Like he motivated me. Like and he was really kind and gracious. So I hope he's done well in life.
Good for
So,
you, man.
yeah.
You know, I can't thank you for joining us today. Sincerely, thank you for the beer. Can't thank you enough for that. And congratulations on all your success. I am so honored to meet you, and I truly mean that, because I hear your name all over the place, and now I finally get to meet you. And Mark Bains, our good friend, who he's always open for drinking beer with me and Ryan. We very much appreciate that as well. Thank you everybody for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, do all that stuff you're supposed to do online. And thank you again to our guests. Really appreciate it, guys. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Mark.
And to the Barrett family in Sweetwater for helping us put this together.
Always.
Our pleasure.